Good morning, you magnificent godling. Welcome. Thanks for stopping by. So, right now, your own power is being used to create the exact reality you do not want, and you are unwittingly helping it to happen. Stay with us, and by the end of this video, you'll understand the one shift you need to make to take back your power for your own use, rather than having it hijacked and used against your own best interests. Good morrow. I intend to make our time together as helpful and empowering as possible, so if you've any questions or want deeper help, please leave me a note in the comments so I can tailor future sessions to your needs. And please don't forget to like and subscribe and share. Now, today we're going to talk about holy perception, true forgiveness, unconditional love, and the reason our civilization is engineered to prevent these states of being from ever stabilizing in your experience. But to really understand what I am about to show you, you have to see something most people never question. The world that you think you are reacting to is not what you think it is. It is a perceptual construct, a dream, a story of a fictional you and how you came to be this way, of why your emotions are justified. And when you're not lucid, you don't just experience this dream as a story, you're identified with it. So everything that happens in it feels really real, urgent, and morally charged, even when it's being shaped, directed, and manipulated unconsciously by you and by others. Notice this in your own life, how something can feel absolutely real and urgent in the moment, and later, in a different frame of mind, you see it completely differently, and often find yourself a little embarrassed for your earlier behavior. That's because the narrative lens you saw through changed, and so the dream shifted. Suddenly, even though nothing was changed, everything was different. And once you understand this process on the personal level, what's happening globally stops looking like chaos and starts looking like manipulation of perception at large scale, mass hypnosis. When you watch the news or you doom scroll through outrage online, have you noticed how quickly your state changes? How suddenly the dream of the world seems to devolve into a nightmare? All that's happening there is hypnosis. A narrative is proposed in a way that outrages, so it sneaks past your rational screening and sets off your entire nervous system. You feel exactly like you're in a bad dream from which you can't seem to waken, and that's not an accident. Most of what the world calls love is really approval-based conditioning. You get affection when you obey, belonging when you conform, acceptance when you play it small so people don't feel challenged to shine more brightly in your presence. Consider all the times in your life that you've felt that, where acceptance depended on not being fully yourself, where you had to feign agreeing to keep the peace. Recall how bad that feels, denying your own truth, and the fact that your tiny act of self-abandonment was, in fact, coerced. All in all, safety is contingent on you not challenging the norm, interpersonal and societal, or the established powers. Make no mistake, those in power know how everything I'm about to tell you, they know how it works, and they're using it to control you, to monetize your suffering, and to keep all the power for themselves. Not abstractly, but through your attention, your reactions, your focus. So, what you get in exchange for your compliance is merely permission to continue living that is struggling in a loveless world to eke out an existence on the scraps the powerful don't notice falling from their tables. I say they don't notice because if they did, they're the sorts that would find a way to cut it off so that you didn't get even that. Now, I know you've felt the quiet exhaustion, like you're maintaining a life that doesn't actually feel like yours, like you're living in a loveless and cruel version of the world, very different from what it was like 40 years ago. This so-called civilization is not about love. Again, it's about compliance. And I don't know about you, but I think love should be the cornerstone of anything that merits the label civilized. By love, I mean compassion and respect for all life, not just the lives that directly serve you or the people in charge. What we actually experience, though, cradle to grave, is behavioral compliance training. Notice how early it starts, what you were rewarded for, what you were corrected for, what parts of you were allowed to exist and be expressed, and which parts were not. And in order to ensure your compliance, those who built the system built it specifically to sabotage your lucidity. Not that they call it by that name, but they know that were you lucid, you would realize they have you hypnotized. That is, conditioned. They've conditioned you to believe they rightly hold power over you. Now, compliance with the law is our side of the social contract. For those in charge, in office, their responsibility is to operate in the public's best interests. But look around. Do you feel represented? Do you feel served? Do you feel your best interests are being looked out for? Lucidity creates the clarity in which you witness all of this, and it allows you to love without permission, question authority, see through manipulation, and reject coercive norms. Thus, the powers that be keep your lucidity, your clarity, under constant attack. Notice how outrage pulls your attention, the gravitational pull of all the moral outrage, and how quickly it consumes your focus. Those in power constantly trying to spin the narrative have certainly noticed it, and they use it to their not-so-good ends of keeping you outraged and in the constant moral hazard that comes with chronic dearth. This is not incidental, it's deliberate, and it's escalating. Because if you ever snap out of the trance society has trained you into, you will realize they are not operating in their roles for the public's best interests. They have already broken the social contract. You, that is we, owe them nothing. Now, this is where control becomes personal. Because what is being revealed in the ongoing global situation is that much of what happens at high levels is not guided by diplomacy, but by coercion, by blackmail. Honey traps are set up for certain people in power or being groomed for power or connected to power, and they're given access to what they most deeply desire. They are encouraged to explore it, to act it out, to feel safe in doing so, to feel they're understood and not judged. So they're encouraged to feed their desires their attention. Attention is your godly mojo, and it becomes addictive. It takes more and more vile behavior, more and more depravity to get the same dopamine hit. So basically, these people are seduced and entrapped, and all of it is recorded. Now ask yourself honestly, is there anything about you that you would not want exposed, that would force you to be seen through a lens of identity you wouldn't want? That fear right there, it's the mechanism of coercion. People are people, they're flawed, and that runs from the top of governments down to all of us held captives of the dream of a civilization that is not civilized at all. Many years later, the shame of these things that they've done, their fear of exposure and punishment, it's all easily used to control them once they've risen into the positions of power that make them really valuable assets. That is apparently how supposedly diplomatic systems are steered in this version of the world. The body creates needs and desire. Conditioning tangles those drives with distorted thoughts. A honey trap is set, and the distortion, the kinks, are encouraged and then weaponized. Don't think the people behind this don't understand exactly how to use your shame against you. This is one of the oldest games in the world. Now let's talk about forgiveness, because this is where the entire moral perceptual trap breaks. Most people don't actually know what true forgiveness is, because they are still taking the dream as being real and not completely subject to the cognitive lens through which you are living it. If what you're reacting to feels absolutely real, then of course forgiveness feels impossible. A Course in Miracles begins with the line that slices straight to this mechanism. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Forgiveness is not a moral action or judgment. It is perceptual. It is corrected perception, lucidity. It is seeing with clarity. It is recognizing that people do not attack from power, but from fear, confusion, and trauma. And more importantly, it's the recognizing that everyone who is not lucid is operating in a sort of trance state. A dream laid like a lens over their experience, shrouding their vision with their belief systems. I say belief again because in the middle of the word belief is the word lie. So think again about the time you reacted in an emotionally volatile way and afterwards changed your mind. That's the same mechanism. Non-lucid people are acting from within a perceptual bubble that feels real to them even as it distorts everything they see. In lucidity, you recognize this because you've seen it in yourself. And when you see that we are all alike in this way, you realize that even the people you most abhor are not truly evil. They are dreaming deeply and often painfully. Yeshua tells us this plainly in A Course in Miracles. All you do is dream. Your eyes are as much as closed most of the time. And here's the part that most people resist because they believe unconsciously that vengeance, which is punishment, is justice. But nothing anyone does, only in dreams, is of any consequence to love at all. Love looks right past the dream to the truth of the dreamer. God's justice is forgiveness of what has only seemed to occur in a dream, a trance. And if you hold even one person outside that forgiveness, you must apply the same measure against yourself, and so be damned. And you act like you are. You think like you are. You perceive a dream of your guilt and the nightmare of our collective present damnation. Sit with that. Seeing this is what makes true forgiveness possible. It's not about tolerance, it's not about approval, but clarity. In clarity, in lucidity, judgment collapses. And with it, disappears all the leverage those who extort the powerful through coercion ever had. Because you cannot blackmail someone who has forgiven everything and so been forgiven everything. Forgiveness removes all the leverage that keeps this very uncivilized civilization running in the very dysfunctional way it is. But you have to be lucid to forgive in the way I am proposing it. Forgiveness removes the leverage, but not morally, simply mechanically. You don't hold people responsible for what they do when they're asleep or heavily drugged. If you do not hold the madman, deranged by shame, guilt, and fear, responsible for what he did in a fever dream while backed into a corner, there's no reason for him to continue as a crazed tyrant. And the entire structure of what we used to consider diplomacy depends on the leverage that clarity of true forgiveness disintegrates. Which is why that entire structure also depends on the belief that vengeance or punishment is justice. Notice how deeply that belief runs, how automatic the impulse toward punishment can feel, because without that demand, there is nothing left to threaten, nothing left to control. Those who are lucid see that everyone in the dream is dreaming, all deluded to varying degrees and in varying ways. Even some of our leaders are apparently criminally insane, so racked and twisted by fear and shame that they'll dare anything to keep us distracted, so we don't, in a moment of lucidity, see clearly what's happening. The lucid realize that even their own past actions came from unconscious identifications with beliefs that skewed their perception and shaped their behavior. And so they see releasing the demand for punishment for another also sets them free. And when that happens, the entire structure that depends on fear, shame, and control dissolves. In holy perception, which is forgiven perception, you waken, lucid within the dream. And that lucidity makes you ungovernable by fear. You cannot be manipulated by guilt, shame, propaganda, or social pressure. You cannot be divided by a narrative. Imagine what your experience would feel like if none of that worked on you anymore. And that is why your awakening is not merely personal. It is revolutionary. Each time you choose holy perception, each time you see innocence where others see sin, each time you refuse to participate in the outrage, each time you stabilize lucidity, this world becomes less governable by the corruption that has owned it for centuries. And the more divine it becomes, because a rising tide lifts all ships. Your lucidity makes the lucidity of others more easily attained. And here's the practical truth that keeps all of this grounded. Unconditional love does not mean unconditional approval or unconditional access. Think about someone you care about passionately and where a division has occurred and clarity, not closeness, is what is needed. You can see someone's innocence and still avoid their unhealed behavior. You can love their soul and still refuse their chaos. Distance is not a rejection. Distance is what preserves clarity. Some people are simply easier to love from further away. I advise you to cherish the love over proximity. So no, I'm not asking you to approve of the bad behavior. I'm asking you to keep it in perspective in lucidity, so you understand that the only thing that stands between us and the improvement in the world that we want, so that all the corruption can be cleaned out, are the grievances, the desire to punish rather than to forgive it and simply put these people where they can't hurt anyone else again. So today, choose one person, just one. Perhaps it's the one you most abhor. I recommend that one. And look at them through the eye, the single eye of holy perception. Not because their behavior merits it, because you are remembering what is real. That's it for today, my magnificent godlings. Please like and subscribe. Share these videos with someone you know who needs comfort and empowerment. Thanks so much for being here. We love you all very, very much. Please reach out to us through our online store if we can help. You can find it at crackpotpublishing.com. Stay lucid. Get out there and change the world by being your magnanimously magnificent self. And bit by bit, together, we will, so help me God, put out that little eye. So be it.